Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Sharp YouTube channel. And in this video, I'm going to ask you that if you can find a bug and how to fix the bug more importantly. So this is my budget app that I will be showing how to build in a workshop, and people who will be attending this workshop, they will also learn how to build this. They will learn about the architecture. They will learn about the relationships in SwiftData and also CloudKit integration. And if you want to register for the workshop, I'll add this link and you can register. It is on September 28th, 11 a.m. Central to 2 p.m. Central. Okay. And it's going to cover a lot of different stuff. I mean, it will be on Zoom live 3-hour workshop. So if you're interested, you can simply enroll in this workshop. And we are also going to cover testing, by the way. So that will be really cool. So one of the things in the workshop is you're displaying a budget and you're also displaying expenses for that budget. So you can see that I'm displaying the budget. This is my budget, which is vacation. And there are certain expenses for that particular budget, like airfare, rental car, and so on. Now, all of this data is dummy. It's basically in the preview container. You can see that all of this data, just for the previews, I have this preview data. And everything works fine. I mean, when I'm looking at a budget detail screen, everything looks fine. But look over here. If I delete airfare or any of these expenses, see that? That total is not really changing at all. So something is wrong. So we need to figure out what exactly is going on. And by the way, since it's for Xcode previews, everything is stored in memory. So we're not really storing it on the device right now. We're just storing it in memory for Xcode previews, which we are looking at on the right-hand side, right here. So what exactly is going on? Why is it not refreshing? Well, first of all, I guess the question is, where is this total property and the remaining coming from? So if you look at the budget detail screen, we find out that this part is responsible for displaying the total spent and the remaining. So they are part of budget class. So let's look at the budget class. This calculation looks fine. I mean, spent, remaining, it's a pretty basic operation that we're doing. So this looks okay, not a big deal. So something else is going on. Well, then the question will be, how are we displaying the expenses? If you look at the budget class, you can see the budget class has a name, it has a limit, and it has an array of expenses. So the relationship between a budget and an expenses is one to many. One budget can have many expenses. And if we go to expense, you can see the inverse relationship also, right there. On line number 19, expense belongs to a budget. Okay. We reached the budget detail screen because somebody clicked or tapped from the budget list screen and they pass in the budget. So, okay, that's fine too. I mean, we can definitely see the budget. It's a vacation. And then how are we displaying the expenses? Well, we're displaying the expenses like this. Budget already contains expenses because budget contains a property called expenses. So we are just going over there and we're iterating through it and displaying all the expenses. And when a person says delete an expense, then we simply remove it from budget.expenses. So everything is firing, but for some reason, this part is not getting updated, this part. So if I remove this, you can see it's not really getting updated. The other question might be that when we remove something, does this body get rendered again or evaluated again? Let's check it out. I'm going to refresh it so that we get our groceries back. So if I remove bread from groceries, well, the first thing I note is if I remove bread or if I remove milk or any of these expenses for some weird reason, the body is not getting reevaluated. And if it's not getting reevaluated, then that means that this will not redraw again with the new values. So that's our first thing, that, well, why is it not getting reevaluated and then eventually re-rendered? So can you guess why is it not getting reevaluated? That's the first question. So take some time, think about that why, when I delete an expense from a budget, why is it not getting re-evaluated? The body is not getting recalculated, re-evaluated, and then eventually it's not getting re-rendered again, which basically means that that's the reason that spent and remaining, spent is this one, total, remaining is this one. Probably I should say spent, right? So let's call it spent. Spent. So spent and remaining, these two things are not getting updated. But why? So the reason, and you can think of it, you can pause the video and start thinking about it. But the reason is, when you look at the budget is by reference. It's a class type, right? So even if you delete something from expenses, it's not really changing the reference, still pointing to the same exact reference. If it was a struct, then it will be a different story. But you can't really have a struct with the model, SwiftData model macro. So it has to be a class. And since it's a class and you delete something, the reference doesn't really get changed. It's the same reference pointing to the same exact thing. And that's the reason it doesn't know, your body doesn't know that, oh, something got changed, I need to be reevaluated and then eventually get re-rendered. It doesn't know that stuff. So that's why it never does. And since, because of being a reference type, a class, the pointer is not really getting changed, and that is the reason that it's not really getting re-rendered. And body is saying, well, nothing got changed because it's still pointing to the same thing. So how can we fix this problem? I'm sure there are many ways of fixing this problem. One of the ways to fix this problem, which I do usually, is I create a query for expenses. Okay? And create an initializer where you can pass in a budget, which I guess you're already passing. So inside the initializer, this query right now, if I simply use this, let me actually go ahead and show you what happens if I use this query, expenses. So wherever we're using budget.expenses, we're just going to change it to expenses. So this expenses is now going to point to this one. Where else are we using? This one. Let's change it to expenses. Now, when you change it, one thing you will note is for the vacation, it's also pulling out grocery budget, milk and bread, and we don't really want that. All right. So how can we make sure that we are not pulling out the stuff from groceries, but only for the selected budget category, which in this case is vacation? So one of the ways that we can do that is we need to change this query dynamically. Meaning, right now, if I say query private var expenses, it's just pulling everything from expenses table. So all the data, it has no filter, no where clause. So what we can do is we can change it in the initializer. So you're going to pass in the budget. We're going to say self.budget equals to budget. We're going to get the budget ID, which is self.budget.persistent model ID. And then we can create a predicate. This is called a dynamic predicate because this will be based on some value that we're passing. And what will the predicate say? Well, the predicate will say and the predicate will be based on expenses. I mean, it's going to filter the expenses. So if the expenses budget dot persistent model ID is equals to the budget ID, then create the predicate and then assign it to query filter with the predicate. So this is going to allow us to create a query dynamically based on a predicate value that is coming from the budget ID. So this is called dynamic queries, and there are other ways to create dynamic queries, but this is the most common one where you create or construct the query inside the initializer. Now it does have some downsides. Since it is constructed inside the initializer, it's only going to be executed once. And if you have some dynamic control which needs to update the query, you can't really call the initializer again, right? Okay, so with this change in place, let's go ahead and see. So I'm going to go ahead and just refresh this. And I'm going to delete airfare. And now you can see the spent and the remaining is definitely getting controlled correctly. See that? If I remove this $400, now spend $20 and I can remove that. And the reason is that when you remove something, because of this query is just looking at for changes in the expenses. And when you're removing something from the expenses table, because we're actually deleting it, then it knows that something has happened and it calls the body, basically reevaluates it, and then eventually finds out, oh, this spent value is changed and the remaining is changed, so I need to do this again, like construct this text view again so I can update the UI. And that's what it is doing. So this is one of the ways that you can make sure that your user interface, your UI, is in sync with the data that is being used. All right. Now, maybe you have come up with a different solution for this. If you have, share it in the comments. That's going to be great. And keep in mind that all of this I will be covering in the workshop, which is on September 28, 2024 from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. It will be a workshop on SwiftData fundamentals, and we will be covering a lot of stuff, including SwiftData architecture, relationships, testing, CloudKit integration, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So it's going to be a live workshop over Zoom, and you can go to this link. I'll add this link into the YouTube description, so you can definitely check it out. Thank you so much. Hope you have enjoyed it.